What would you do if you were a 25-year-old virgin, living a quiet life, and suddenly your entire world changed overnight, because you were given to the most powerful billionaire in the country? Not sold. Not kidnapped. Given. By the one person you trusted most. And what if, instead of anger or cruelty, he looked at you like you were the most fragile thing in the world? Before we start the story, leave a comment to let us know which city you're watching from. Like and subscribe to support our community. Your support means a lot to us. Now, enjoy the story as we continue. Now, let's begin. My name is Eliana Grace. I was 25, and I had never even kissed a man. People thought I was weird for that. But I always believed love should be pure and safe. My life was simple: wake up, help mama with the bakery, read romance novels at night, and dream of someone who would truly love me. We lived in a small town, where everyone knew everyone. My mama, Ruth, was the strongest woman I knew. She raised me alone. My father died before I was born. All my life, she protected me, from men, from danger, from dreams she said were too big. That morning, I noticed something off. Mama was pacing, her hands trembling as she wiped the same spot on the counter over and over. "Mama?" I asked. She looked at me with eyes I couldn't read. "Eliana, promise me something. Anything. If something ever happens, trust me, even if it doesn't make sense. Can you promise?" I hesitated. "Yes, Mama. I promise." She smiled weakly, kissed my forehead, and said, "You're stronger than you know." I didn't know that would be the last peaceful moment of my old life. It was a Sunday evening when it happened. The sun had barely set when a black car, sleek, long, and clearly not from our town, pulled up outside our bakery. 3 men in suits stepped out. They weren't smiling. "Eliana Grace?" one of them asked. I nodded slowly. "Yes? We're here to escort you. Mr. Lawson is expecting you." "Who?" "Your guardian signed the papers. You belong to Mr. Alexander Lawson now." "What do you mean belong?" Mama came out then, her face pale. "Eliana, go with them." "What?" "No, Mama, what's going on?" "Who is Mr. Lawson?" Tears rolled down her face. I had no choice. "I'm sorry. Please, remember what you promised." They didn't handcuff me. They didn't drag me. But they didn't let me run, either. And Mama, my rock, stood there, crying, and watched them take me. The car smelled like leather and fear. I clutched my chest, trying not to cry. Who was Mr. Lawson? And why did my mama give me away? The mansion was bigger than any hotel I'd ever seen. White walls, glass doors, and silence that made my heart race. They led me to a room with a fireplace and a tall man standing by the window. His back was to me. "Eliana," he said without turning. His voice was deep, calm, dangerous. "I'm not yours. I didn't agree to this." He turned slowly. Alexander Lawson. Early 30s. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark eyes that looked like they could break you. But what shocked me most, he looked tired. Lonely, even. "I didn't ask for a girl," he said. "But your mother owed a debt. And she offered you instead." "My mama would never." "She did." He handed me a paper with her signature. I stared at it, my world spinning. "What do you want from me?" He walked closer. Not touching. Just watching. "Nothing. Not unless you choose to stay. You're free to go, but if you walk out that door, your mother loses everything. Her home. Her bakery. Her life." My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. "You have until morning." Then he left me alone with my thoughts, and a choice I never wanted. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of a bed too soft for my thoughts, staring at the moon through the tall windows. Could I leave and let Mama suffer? Could I stay with a stranger? I cried until my chest ached. Then I thought of Mama's tired eyes. The bakery. The town. Morning came like a whisper. A soft knock on the door. A maid brought in breakfast, placing the tray on the table without a word. I pushed the food away. I wasn't hungry. I was terrified. Then I stood, walked to the mirror, and looked at the girl I barely recognized. "You promised her," I whispered. "Be strong." I opened the door and walked downstairs. Alexander was waiting. "I'll stay," I said. "But on my terms." He raised an eyebrow. "And what terms are those?" "I'm not yours. You don't touch me. I help around here. I earn my keep. I'm not a toy." For a moment, silence. Then he nodded once. "Agreed." Just like that. I became part of his world. The mansion was beautiful, but it was cold, too clean, too quiet. It felt like no one really lived there. I spent the next few days exploring. There were 10 bedrooms, 2 kitchens, a private library, a music room, and a garden I wasn't allowed to enter yet. Alexander worked all day in his office. I only saw him at dinner. He barely ate, barely spoke. But he always looked at me. Not in a creepy way. Just like I confused him. One night, I found him in the music room, staring at an old piano. "Do you play?" I asked. He shook his head. "My mother did. This was her favorite room." "Where is she now?" "Gone." That one word broke something in his voice. I sat beside him, and for the first time, I didn't see the billionaire. I saw a broken boy hiding behind a $1 million suit. We didn't speak again that night. But I knew something between us had changed. He was still a stranger, but not a monster. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone. It was raining the morning I found the garden gate open. The forbidden path. The one place Alexander said I couldn't go. But curiosity won. I stepped into the garden and gasped. Roses. Hundreds of them. Blooming even in the drizzle. A marble bench sat under a willow tree. And in the center, a statue of a woman holding a child. A name was engraved beneath, Caroline Lawson. His mother. I felt like an intruder. But I couldn't leave. The place was too beautiful, too sad. "Eliana." His voice behind me. I turned, heart pounding. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. The gate was open. He didn't yell. He didn't look angry. "She loved this place," he said quietly. "She used to say the roses reminded her that pain can still bloom into beauty." "I didn't mean to cross your line." He looked at me with something unreadable in his eyes. "You didn't." "Not this time." We stood there in the rain. Silent. Something passed between us. Not love. Not yet. But maybe, a beginning. I spent the next afternoon in the library, brushing dust from old books. That's when I found the letter. It was inside a novel, Wuthering Heights. The handwriting was elegant, old. "To my son, if you ever feel alone, remember, love is not weakness. It is the only thing that ever made me strong." I closed the letter slowly. My hands shook. That night at dinner, I couldn't stop glancing at Alexander. He caught me. "What is it?" "Nothing." He leaned forward. "You found something." I nodded. "A letter. From your mother." He was quiet. Then said, "She used to write notes and hide them in books. She believed stories could carry feelings when words failed." She was right. His eyes locked on mine. "You're not what I expected, Eliana." I didn't know if that was good or bad. But for the first time, I didn't want to run. I wanted to stay. And see what happened next. That night, I couldn't sleep. The letter stayed in my mind, her words, her handwriting, the way she still seemed to speak to him through pages she once touched. I wondered what kind of woman Caroline Lawson was. What had happened to her? What wound had her absence left in Alexander? The house creaked quietly around me as I got up and wandered down the hallway. I don't know what pulled me to the music room, but I found myself standing at the door, peering into the dim light. Alexander was there. He didn't see me at first. He was seated at the piano bench, head bowed, hands hovering over the keys like he wasn't sure if they were friend or enemy. Then he pressed a note. It was soft. Fragile. Then another. And another. He was playing. I stayed quiet, afraid to break the moment. The melody was slow, aching, like a memory that wouldn't stop bleeding. "I didn't know you could play," I said softly. He didn't jump or flinch. He just stopped playing. "I can't," he murmured. "Not really. I just remember her hands. How they moved. I try to copy them sometimes." I walked in slowly and sat beside him. "Your mother was beautiful," I said. "I saw her statue in the garden." He nodded. "She died when I was 16. Cancer. My father buried her out there, under her favorite tree. He built that garden for her." "What was she like?" His jaw clenched slightly. "Warm. Fierce. She read me poetry when I had nightmares. She fought with my father like a lioness when he tried to turn me into his clone. She had a laugh that made everything feel safe." I looked at him differently then, not as the powerful billionaire who owned me, but as a man who had once been a boy with nightmares and a mother who made them go away. "Is that why you're so cold now?" I asked before I could stop myself. "Because she's gone?" His eyes met mine. Unflinching. "No. I became cold the day I realized love couldn't save her. All her strength, all her warmth, and still, she died. I told myself then, never again. No love. No weakness. But love isn't weakness, Alexander." He looked at me. "That's what she said. You sound like her." I smiled gently. "Maybe that's a good thing." We sat in silence for a while, the air heavy with things unspoken. Then he asked, "Do you miss your father?" "I never met him," I replied. "He died before I was born. But sometimes, I imagine him. When I was little, I used to pretend he left me little signs. Like how the wind would blow when I asked the question, or how a star would twinkle extra bright when I was sad." His voice was quiet. "That sounds like something she would have believed." "She?" I smiled. "Your mother again?" He nodded. "She used to say the dead never really leave. They just learn to speak in softer ways." I felt something shift between us then. Not a dramatic thunderclap. Just a soft, invisible string pulling tighter. He wasn't just a man who had everything. He was a man who had lost more than most people ever knew. And maybe, that was why he looked at me the way he did. Like I was something rare. Something he couldn't afford to break. I reached out and touched the piano key closest to me. It let out a gentle note, like a heartbeat. "I could teach you," I said quietly. "If you want." He looked at me again, really looked, and for the first time, his guard cracked. "Maybe," he said. "Someday." Then he stood. "You should rest. It's late." I nodded, rising to follow him out. But at the doorway, I paused. "Alexander?" He turned. "Thank you for letting me in." His expression softened, just for a second. "Don't thank me yet, Eliana. I'm still trying to figure out if I deserve you in my world." I didn't reply. Because deep down, I was starting to wonder the same thing. The knock came just after midnight. Not the soft knock of a maid, or the quiet courtesy Alexander had grown into, but a loud, sharp pounding that echoed through the marble halls like a warning. I sat up in bed, heart racing. Then came voices. Raised. Urgent. Male. I slipped on a robe and tiptoed down the hallway. From the staircase, I could see Alexander at the front door, shirtless, his expression like stone. Two men in black coats stood outside in the rain, water dripping from their hair and shoulders. One of them stepped forward. "She's here, isn't she?" Alexander didn't blink. "Leave. Now." The man scoffed. "You think you can keep what doesn't belong to you?" I flinched. "Try me," Alexander growled. Before things could escalate, I stepped down the stairs. My voice was shaky but loud enough. "Who are they?" Alexander turned, his face dark with something between anger and fear. "Go back upstairs." "No," I said. "Tell me what's going on." The taller man smiled coldly. "We're from the Kavanaugh family. Your mother owed more than she told you. Lawson settled the first half. But the rest? That's still due." Alexander stepped in front of me. "You're not touching her. We're not here for her, Lawson. We're here to remind you that debts never truly disappear. She's just the start." My stomach twisted. "Just the start?" "Go," Alexander said again, his voice like ice. The men finally turned and walked into the darkness. No threats. No fight. But I knew it wasn't over. Inside, Alexander slammed the door shut, breathing hard. I spoke gently. "You knew they'd come?" He didn't face me. "I was hoping they wouldn't." "What debt are they talking about?" Silence. "Then, your mother's wasn't the only one. Mine too. My family was tied to them years ago, a blood debt, hidden beneath businesses and favors." I tried to wrap my mind around it. "So they think I'm, what? Collateral?" His jaw clenched. "Not anymore." "Then why do they say I'm just the start?" He finally looked at me. And I saw something raw in his eyes, fear. Not for himself. For me. "Because if I keep you close," he whispered, "they lose leverage. But if I fall in love with you, they win." That silenced me. I hadn't realized we were walking that line. "You're scared," I said. "I don't get scared." I stepped closer. "Then why won't you let yourself care?" He flinched like I'd struck him. "Because everything I've ever cared for has been taken from me." I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. "You don't have to be alone in this." He looked at our hands. "You don't understand what you've been brought into, Eliana." "Then help me understand." There was a pause. And in that pause, the walls between us cracked, just a little. "I'll keep you safe," he said. "Even if it means losing you." My heart ached at his words. I wanted to scream that I wasn't something to be bargained, borrowed, or broken. But I also saw the war in his eyes. The man who once viewed me as a debt, now saw me as something fragile he couldn't afford to lose. And maybe, something he didn't know how to love. We stood in the hallway, the storm outside still raging. And inside me, a storm of my own. Because I wasn't sure when it happened, but I didn't want to leave anymore. Not even if it meant danger. Not even if it meant heartbreak. I wanted to fight for the man behind the billion-dollar armor. And I had a feeling, the real battle was just beginning. The air in the mansion had shifted since the dinner. Not dramatically, but I could feel it. A softness in the way Alexander looked at me, a silence that didn't feel heavy anymore. It was as if that single line, "You're not what I expected," had peeled back a layer of his steel exterior. I spent the morning cleaning out a linen closet no one had touched in years. I hummed softly, letting the rhythm of folding and dusting calm my mind. That's when I heard it. A phone ringing. Not the usual house line. This was different, urgent, shrill, coming from Alexander's office. I wasn't supposed to go near there without permission. But something in my gut tugged me forward. I knocked. No answer. The ringing kept going. I opened the door slightly. "Alexander?" I called. Still nothing. The office was empty. But the phone, an old rotary-style landline, kept ringing on the desk. Against my better judgment, I picked it up. "Hello?" There was a pause. Then a gruff voice. "Put Lawson on." I'm sorry, he's not here. Can I take a message?" "You tell him the past doesn't stay buried forever. We know what he did. And we're coming." Click. My fingers froze around the receiver. My heart thundered. What had I just heard? Footsteps. I turned and found Alexander at the door, his jaw clenched. "Who was that?" I swallowed hard. "Someone asking for you. He said, he knows what you did. And that he's coming." Alexander shut the door, his expression unreadable. "You shouldn't have answered." "I'm sorry, He held up a hand. "No. It's not your fault." Then he walked to the desk, pressed a hidden button under it, and a steel panel slid over the bookshelf. Behind it, a small safe embedded in the wall. My eyes widened. "What is that?" "Plan B," he muttered, entering a code. He pulled out a sleek black file and a gun. My breath caught. "Alexander, what's going on?" He turned to me. "There are things about my family. Things I haven't told you. My father, he made enemies. Dangerous ones. And when he died, they thought it was over. And it's not. No." I stared at the weapon in his hand, then back at the man I thought I was beginning to understand. "Are you in danger?" He looked at me with a softness that didn't match the steel in his grip. "Not if I can help it." I promised myself I'd never drag someone innocent into this life again. "Again?" He didn't answer. I took a step closer. "You don't have to carry it all alone." That made him pause. Really pause. Then, to my surprise, he sat on the edge of the desk and let out a breath. "You know the letter you found? My mother wrote those notes because she knew the world I'd inherit was darker than I deserved." "You're not your father," I said. "I'm not sure I'm not," he said bitterly. I shook my head. "You gave me a choice. That doesn't sound like a monster." His eyes met mine. Tired. Grateful. Afraid. "I don't know what's coming, Eliana. But I know one thing, if anything happens to you because of me." "Nothing will," I interrupted. "Because I'm not leaving." The silence that followed felt like a vow. Outside, thunder rolled over the horizon. Something was coming. But for the first time, we were facing it together. That night, the storm arrived. Rain lashed against the mansion's tall windows. Thunder growled like a warning, low and long, rattling something deep in my chest. I stood by the window in the guest room, arms wrapped around myself, trying to make sense of everything, of Alexander's hidden past, of the phone call, of the gun I saw in his hands. A part of me wanted to run. But a bigger part, the one that trusted him, the one that had seen his eyes soften whenever he looked at me, refused. A soft knock came at my door. "Come in," I said, turning. Alexander stepped inside, drenched from head to toe. His hair was slicked back with rainwater, shirt clinging to his skin, jaw set like he had just fought a war and barely won. "I checked the perimeter," he said. "Just in case." I walked toward him slowly. "You went out in that?" He gave a half shrug. "I needed to feel the rain. Reminds me I'm still human." There was a pause before I took his hand and guided him to the edge of the bed. "Sit. You're freezing." He obeyed, and I reached for the towel near the bathroom sink. I gently ran it through his hair, drying him off like a child lost in a storm. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I whispered. He exhaled. "Because you were the first good thing in a long time. And I didn't want to ruin that." I knelt in front of him, my hands still tangled in his hair. "You didn't ruin anything. But I need the truth, Alexander. All of it." He swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. "My father ran an underground financial network, money laundering, political blackmail, even weapons trades. He was untouchable. When he died, his enemies thought they could take the throne. But I closed everything. Burn the bridges. And they didn't like that, I murmured. They think I know where the money is. But I burned it all. I wanted out. I stared into his eyes. So they're not just coming for you, they're coming for a ghost. He nodded. For a long moment, the storm outside was the only sound. Then, carefully, I stood and reached for his hand. Come with me. He followed me down the hall. I led him into the music room, the one place in the mansion that always felt like peace. I sat by the piano and gestured for him to join me. He hesitated. I don't know how to play. Then just listen. I let my fingers move softly over the keys. Not a full song, just a whisper of notes, soft and broken, like the two of us. He sat beside me, shoulders slowly relaxing as the melody filled the silence between us. I used to play when I felt scared, I said. Back when I had no idea what my future looked like. Music was the only thing that listened without judging. Alexander stared ahead. You're stronger than you think, Eliana. No, I said. I'm just learning that fear doesn't mean weakness. It means you still have something to lose. His gaze shifted to me. You're what I'm afraid to lose, he said, voice thick. And just like that, everything in me cracked open. Not from pain, but from love. He leaned in, slowly, giving me space to turn away. I didn't. When our lips finally met, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't greedy. It was a promise wrapped in the silence of a storm. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a girl caught in a stranger's world. I felt home. Even as the thunder roared. The morning after the storm felt different. Not just because the rain had stopped or because the clouds had cleared, but because something inside me had shifted. Lying next to Alexander on the couch in the music room, I watched the golden light of dawn spill through the windows and dance over his features. He looked peaceful in his sleep. Younger, somehow. The lines of stress and danger softened in rest. But I knew it wouldn't last. I slipped out of his arms gently and tiptoed into the hallway. My heart still raced from everything that had happened, the kiss, the truth, the threat on the phone. I was falling for him, and falling deeper into a world I never asked for. I made my way to the kitchen, hoping a hot cup of tea might calm me down. I had just placed the kettle on the stove when a voice startled me. You stayed. I turned. Alexander stood at the doorway, hair tousled, shirt wrinkled, eyes searching. I did, I said softly. Should I have run? His lips curled into a faint smile. I wouldn't blame you if you did. I poured 2 cups and handed him one. You said your enemies are still watching you. He nodded, eyes fixed on the swirling steam. Then why haven't you left this place? Gone somewhere safer? He looked out the window. Because running doesn't erase a past. It just delays the reckoning. I sat down at the counter, staring at him. So what happens next? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled out his phone and showed me a message. A string of numbers. Coordinates? I asked. He nodded. They sent it this morning. A meeting place. Tonight. My stomach dropped. And you're going? I have to. If I don't, they'll come here. The weight of his words hung between us like thick smoke. Then I'm going with you, I said. He blinked, as if I'd spoken another language. Absolutely not. You promised we'd face this together. I meant emotionally, he snapped. Then softened. Not with you standing in the middle of something that could get you hurt. I reached across the counter and touched his hand. You gave me a choice once. Give me another. Let me choose to stand by you. His jaw clenched. You're brave, Eliana. But this isn't your fight. Maybe not, I whispered. But you are my choice. And I won't let you walk into danger alone. He stared at me for a long time, his eyes full of conflict. Then finally, he gave a small, reluctant nod. We'll need a plan. That afternoon, the mansion transformed. Alexander was no longer the man who hosted dinners and arranged designer gifts. He was sharp, focused, a strategist preparing for war. He showed me a map, circled the coordinates, explained every exit strategy. "I want you in the car, engine running. If anything feels wrong, you leave." I shook my head. We agreed, together. He looked like he wanted to argue. But instead, he cupped my cheek, kissed my forehead, and said, "Then stay close." Night fell quickly. And so did my heartbeat. As we drove through the outskirts of the city, toward the abandoned warehouse marked on the map, I glanced at Alexander. His jaw was tight, his eyes unreadable, but his hand was gripping mine. Whatever we were about to face, we were already in too deep to turn back. But I wasn't afraid. Because in this whirlwind of secrets, danger, and unexpected love, he was my anchor. Even if everything changed tonight. The silence was deafening. Alexander's eyes never left mine, and in that endless second, I saw every crack in his armor. Every ounce of fear, love, and desperation. The man who had once locked the world out was now standing in the line of fire, not for his life, but for mine. "I won't do it," he finally said, his voice low, but unshakable. The man stepped forward, cocking his gun. "Then you both die." Everything slowed. I didn't even realize I had moved until I was in front of Alexander, my arms outstretched like a shield. My heart pounded, but my voice was clear. "You want to make him pay? Then do it the right way. Not like this. Not by turning into the monster you claim he is." The man's gun trembled slightly. He wasn't expecting this. Neither was Alexander. "Get out of the way, girl," the man snapped. "She's not moving," Alexander said, stepping beside me. "And neither am I." "You're willing to die for her," another one of them barked. Alexander looked at me, his hand brushing mine. "I've lived a long time protecting the wrong things. If I die protecting her, then I'll finally be doing something right." The tension in the room cracked like ice. The leader, his face finally coming into the dim light, lowered the gun a fraction. He was older than I expected, with hard eyes and a scar along his jawline. "This isn't over," he muttered. "But it won't be tonight." He gave a small signal, and the other two men backed off. Just like that, they disappeared into the shadows. I couldn't move. My legs were trembling, breath shallow, tears threatening. Alexander turned to me, cupped my face, and searched my eyes. "Are you okay?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure. "You didn't let go of me." "I never will," he said. We stood there for a while, holding on to each other in the middle of that dark warehouse, like survivors of a storm we hadn't seen coming. Back at the car, neither of us spoke. We drove through the night in silence, but it wasn't heavy, it was sacred. A silence filled with the weight of what almost happened, and the power of what didn't. When we finally pulled up to the mansion, dawn was just beginning to break. Alexander cut the engine, turned to me. "There's more to tell you. Things I should have said long ago." "I know," I whispered. "And when you're ready, I'll listen." His eyes softened. "You keep surprising me, Eliana." I smiled faintly. "You're not what I expected either." He leaned over and pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead. "Thank you for standing with me." "I meant it," I said. "You're my choice." And in that fragile, beautiful moment, I realized something. This wasn't just his reckoning. It was mine too. We weren't just fighting his past anymore, we were choosing our future together. The mansion was quiet when we arrived, the first light of dawn casting soft shadows on the walls. But inside, I felt the tension buzzing between us, heavier now, like the calm before a storm. Alexander didn't say a word as he led me into his private study, the same room where the phone call had shattered the fragile peace between us. He closed the door behind us and finally turned to face me, his expression serious but not cold. "There's something I need to show you," he said, his voice low. He walked over to the hidden safe beneath the bookshelf, the one I'd only seen once before. With a quick code, He slid it open and pulled out a thick, leather-bound journal. The edges were worn, pages yellowed with age. "This belonged to my mother," he said, handing it to me carefully. "She kept it hidden all these years." I opened the journal slowly, feeling the weight of history in my hands. The handwriting inside was elegant but hurried, filled with names, dates, and a story I had never expected. She wrote about our family's legacy, the power, the enemies, and the price we had to pay, Alexander explained, watching me closely. As I read, the pieces began to fit together. The threats, the phone calls, the danger lurking behind Alexander's polished life, it all stemmed from a bitter feud his father had started, involving powerful rivals who wanted control over the family empire. "She wasn't just afraid for him," I murmured. "She was afraid for us." Alexander nodded, his eyes darkening. "She believed that the legacy I inherited was a curse. That the people we trusted the most could turn against us." The journal revealed secrets that cut deep, betrayals by close allies, silent wars fought in boardrooms and back alleys, and a darkness that had shadowed Alexander's family for decades. I looked up, meeting his gaze. "Why didn't you tell me all this sooner?" He sighed heavily. "Because I wanted to protect you, from the truth and from the danger. But now, hiding it isn't an option anymore." I closed the journal gently. "We can't run forever." "No," he said quietly. "We have to face this. Together." For the first time since I met him, Alexander let down the walls around his heart. He shared stories of his childhood, of a boy who had loved and lost, who had been forced to grow up too fast, and who had carried the weight of his family's mistakes for too long. And in those moments, I saw the real Alexander, the man behind the billionaire, the protector, the broken soul yearning for peace. As the sun rose higher, we made a silent promise. No more secrets. No more lies. Only truth. Only us. Together, we would fight whatever darkness lay ahead. And no matter what, I knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The storm had passed, but its mark remained, on the walls of the mansion, on the edges of our hearts, and on the path that lay ahead. Alexander and I had faced shadows darker than either of us imagined. The secrets, the threats, the battles, all pieces of a puzzle that had shaped who he was and who we could become together. But through it all, something stronger had grown. Trust. Hope. A love forged not just in passion, but in courage and truth. I wasn't the same girl who arrived at his doorstep, uncertain and afraid. I was someone who had chosen to stand by him, not as a possession or a secret, but as an equal partner, a light in the darkness. Alexander wasn't the untouchable billionaire anymore. He was a man who had learned to let someone in, to share his fears, his burdens, and his dreams. Together, we decided to rewrite the legacy that had threatened to destroy us. No longer would we be prisoners of the past. Instead, we would build something new, a life filled with honesty, resilience, and the kind of love that could weather any storm. As the sun set on that chapter of our lives, I held his hand and smiled. Because sometimes, the most powerful transformation begins when you let go of fear and choose to believe in change. And in that choice, everything truly changed. Hey there, story lovers. If you want to add a little more magic, adventure, and heartwarming moments to your day, make sure you subscribe to the Daily Stories channel on YouTube. Join our community of dreamers and seekers of inspiration. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our new story every single day.